Alrighty, hello everybody, and welcome back to Dynascape's Intermediate Cup. We are officially done with the round of 16 weekend. We have had some very electrifying matchups, some very close calls, and even a tiebreaker this round. But there is one thing left to do this weekend before we send you all on your way to enjoy another, hopefully not stressful week. It is time to bring you guys the Quarterfinals Mappool Showcase. As always, my name is Sparky, and I am joined in the commentary booth by none other than Logan636. Hopefully they're here. Logan, how you doing?
Yo, what's up? I'm doing pretty good. I'm really excited for the showcase as well. I think this quarterfinals pool is a pool that we've come back to a lot for quality assurance and to be sure it plays well, and I'm really excited to show it off. And yeah, we had a really exciting round with a lot of upsets, twists and turns, really close outcomes, and I think that these pools are really pushing players and making interesting matches, so I hope that continues going forward.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think we've had a stretch of weekend where we've seen like complete blowouts. We've seen teams being able to take points off of others, and we've seen some back and forths. Like you mentioned, we've even seen upsets. There are some higher seeded teams that are now gone from this tournament, and as we crank the difficulty up just that little bit higher, we officially approach the mid-game portion of this tournament. So, I think if we're all ready to go, let's not keep the players waiting any longer. We can get into the showcase proper, and we can start it off with what will be, I believe it's going to be Rice 1. Yep, Rice 1. It is going to be Signals by Hinako 1804 on a 1.15x rate. We're starting to get into cranking up the BPM on some of these charts, because boy, do we need it sometimes.
Yeah, sure thing. This map is mostly going to consist of jump stream, as our Rice ones have been. Just flat 200 BPM jump stream. I think compared to Ushina Hareru in the last pool, though, this jump stream is going to be a little bit denser than last time and have a little bursts at the end that could trip players up. But we'll get to that when we get to that. Right now, this intro is just pretty calm. Lets you get your nerves intact before we get into the real meat of the map.
Yeah, you can already see the build-up begin, a transition, a little bit of a jump troll, not enough to really disturb anybody, but then you start with the jump stream. A couple of hand patterns as well, some 3-note chords just for good measure to keep you on your toes. Can't really autopilot your way through it, but I think it's still in the realm of comfortable BPM. I think 200, once we cross that mark and we start to push it higher in the later rounds, we'll start to see some players on some teams begin to maybe show some signs of strain, either 200s, 100s, or even misses just flat out.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think this pick is a lot more physical than our jump stream picks have been, and I think this is definitely harder than our qualifier was. But teams have been doing exceptionally well on these straightforward picks, and that's something we've definitely taken note of. So the better you do, the better we're going to bump it up. So this is, I think, a good kind of difficulty level for this stage.
Yeah, definitely a good bit of a checkpoint kind of pick to go into. Still comfortable for the higher end, but definitely starting to drop some players here and there. And I mean, to be fair, it's jump stream. It's something that I think most, if not all, players are familiar with. Comfortable, debatable, but this should be relatively straightforward for everybody to at least swing a good score on. So nice little introduction to the pool. We can move on to our next pick, and it is going to be Rice 2. Quick little download in the background. And we get the replay.
Awesome. Yeah, so this is going to be our more speed-focused map, and it's going to be Lost Without You by Ray, clocking in a ODA, HPA, and a pretty fair length. It's going to be pretty short and sweet in terms of what you're going to see. Just straight up 262 BPM streams. It snapped to 1/6. I believe that's the BPM.
Somewhere around there. The conversions always trip me up personally, but yeah, definitely a little bit less jump stream, hand stream oriented, more of the standard Rice 2 we have been seeing, just single note streams, change up the patterns here and there, but once it starts to get going, you'll really start to feel it take off. And thankfully both of these picks so far in and around that 2-minute mark, so not too long that you start to burn away the stamina, but not too short that a singular miss could potentially just ruin your team's run right out of the gate.
Yeah, getting into it, you're going to see there's a lot of implicit mini jacks in these streams. They are pretty consistent with where they're placed, so if you know kind of the rhythm of what's going on in the song, they're not going to be too bad to hit. The patterning, I would compare it to Ball from last round. It's about that difficulty. It's just we've cranked up the speed a bit. But if you've got a grip on these kind of straightforward picks, which I know a lot of teams in this tournament do, it shouldn't be too bad for you.
Yeah, it's always interesting when you increase the BPM even just a slight bit. It can really add a layer of complexity to patterns that you might be familiar with, but just needing to get the fingers down that ever so slight bit faster, you start to inadvertently begin to crush some of these patterns. You start to rush a little bit, and who knows, maybe even double stopping. You just completely botch a section. And like you said, those implied mini jacks through some of these sections, it could lead to some chain bad judgments. But again, another quick in, quick out, and just like that, we're done with Rice 2.
Next up in the tank, it's going to be Rice 3. And it's going to be Argyle by Koki, formerly known as Koki Play. And this map is going to be our first mixed Rice map. It's going to be mostly a dump. It's going to have... It follows the vocals very closely and has a lot of aggressive snapping. It is not easy to get a good score on, but I think it's a really fun map to play and fits the difficulty pretty well.
Yeah, for sure. We start to see the introduction of what'll probably be the word of the weekend for some of these mixed Rice picks, which are flams and grace notes just littering the playfield. Like you said, it follows this vocal melody very closely, so you get a lot of interpretations of some of those vocal runs found in some of these patterns. So paying respect to them is going to be very important as you make your way through this. Some players might find this very fun, others might find this basically like pulling teeth, because you're trying to act your way through it, and it's so hard to just stay consistent on some of these patterns.
Yeah, I'm the one who set the replay for this, and I did not get SS on my first try. I will just say that much. With all the I think a lot of dumps typically they'll tend to anchor the vocals a lot more, or they'll tend to use flams on the vocals a lot more. This one is so freeform in terms of what it does per syllable that you have to constantly be on your tippy toes in terms of what you got to do next with your fingers, and it is not easy to act at a top level.
Absolutely. You get used to speeding up and slowing down through some of these sections, and it'll be interesting to see which teams decide to keep this around. I could see more Rice-oriented teams, the ones that really excelled on some of the earlier tech picks, maybe wanting to keep this around because of the fact that, especially if there's still wide matchups in terms of seedings, it's you can really bully a team out of a pick like this if you can keep the accuracy between the two of you together. But on the flip side, I could see a lot of misses just raining through here and there through this song.
It's definitely so easy to misplace your fingers on this map and just get a lot of 200s or a lot of misses really quick.
Absolutely, but hopefully you guys are up to the task on this pick, and we can move on to Rice 4. A classic. It's gonna be Sprite.
The most banger pick of the tournament, maybe? That's yet to be seen. But this map is a very, you'll see, it's a very fun one. It's just graces, and more graces, and even more graces. It takes a lot of finger control. It's going to be played to this kind of swingy melody, and this and Argyle are kind of our really not technical but dumpy kind of tests of mixed Rice. So I think players are going to be doing pretty good on this, but I think it is going to be a challenge.
Yeah, for sure. Especially you go from vocal dump to this sort of oh god, dare I say wub style dump.
No wub.
The wubs just coming down, and again just keeping your fingers under control, handling some of these transitions. You get these mini jack patterns thrown at you out of nowhere when you're trying to keep these grace notes in check, and it's getting the doubles that are kind of interspersed inside of the flams is going to be the real test for teams wanting to get a good team score on this. But again, it's similar to the previous pick in Argyle. It's you can kind of bully teams out of a pick like this if you can keep it together, but doing it under pressure you can just find yourself bleeding accuracy and not even realizing it because you're holding on to the full combo, but next thing you know, your accuracy is like 98%, and where's the score?
Yeah, for sure. This is definitely a map where I can see misses not mattering very much because it is a longer map, 3 minutes long. It's got about 2,000 notes in it and a lot for you to drop accuracy on. So those teams who kind of struggle with this more technical rice accuracy, you're probably going to want to hope for a couple more drops than you usually might need from an opponent to win points on this.
Yeah,
and as
that.
Go on.
I was gonna say that, or you can just outright ban it because you already have something like Argyle to contend with. It's kind of pick your poison if you're not comfortable with either of these two picks so far.
Yeah, pretty much. All I was gonna say is the second part, you get that little break, and the second part plays really similar to the first part. I do think it's a little bit easier because you're not having to deal with as many mini jacks in the little wub-wubs.
Yeah, and you can kind of get your footing a little bit easier. There aren't as many jagged transitions, if I were to put it like that. It's more once you kind of get the flow of where all those grace notes start and stop, your fingers kind of just snap to where they need to be. A couple of jumps just for good measure. Make sure that you're not completely single note running the structures, but overall, again, if you can handle this sort of free form slam style tech, then again, another really good pick for you.
Yeah, I do want to say really quick, thank you to Gil for uploading this edit for us. Gil's awesome. He's a great guy. And yeah, that's about it for Sprite.
Alrighty, so we continue on. Another shoegazer pick in a pool. It is going to be Underoath's writing on the walls here.
This is going to be a very consistency-focused tech pick. I think it's the longest pick of the rice pool. I will check to be sure I'm not mistaken. Yes, it is. This map, it changes up so much in what it's doing throughout the course of the map, and it is 3 minutes long. I think we're going to see a lot of teams struggling to get FCs on this, even if they're going into the match very comfortable. And as you get into it, you already see we're having these jump stream runs that are mixed in with these 1-6 snappy bursts. You have jacks to contend with. You have just about everything thrown at you already, and we're not even into the first 400 combo yet.
Yeah, it's going to be a bit of a struggle to get to this mark, but once you do, I was about to say you can really start to settle in, but really just the amount of transitions in between these structures, it doesn't give you much room to kind of turn your brain off. You do need to focus through every section of this chart, but honestly, if you can handle those transitions, then you should be in a pretty good place. And like you mentioned, due to the length, you can probably have enough time to recover from potential early misses, maybe just a bit of jitters through that opening. Yeah. But continuing on, you got to make sure you kind of lock in, because it's never going to let up once it starts.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, this map has one break in it, and it's in the third quarter for about 15 seconds. So it's just, it goes on and on and on, and sometimes it does a completely new pattern you'll never see again in the map. But then you get into parts like this one, where it just repeats itself for a second, and you have to like kind of get your fingers in that rhythm, and if you get them out of that rhythm, you can drop a lot of misses at once.
Yeah, for sure, but as we continue on, you get these hands into jump stream, into these broken up runs, into some bursts here and there. It really is just like a medley of different structures that you're being asked to contend with, and you never really do get a chance to settle in. Again, I mean, we're already going into the final third. We're going to finally get to that first break. You're already 2,000 combo in. If you're holding on to the FC here, you can kind of catch your breath a little bit, because before you know it, the song's going to end in a little bit.
Yeah, this ending, if you are not like shaking nervous, this ending is piece of cake compared to the rest of the map. So if you make it here, you're pretty much set. But that being said, I do think that it's going to make you really nervous sitting here on a potential FC, knowing you have just that little bit more to go.
Yeah, and it's just staying focused for these little novelties that come out, and then this final burst. I can just envision it. There's going to be a match where two teams are like inside of 1,000 points of each other, just swinging back and forth. And I hope that nobody breaks at that ending, because it is going to be lights out for that run. But that will do it for Rice 5. We can move on to the final Rice pick in this pool. It is going to be, as you can see on the side, what do you want from me?
So what do you want from us? This map is going to be our Jack-centric map. I say Jack-centric as in this round of 16. That map was pretty Jack heavy, but it also had a lot of bursts in it, had a lot of jump stream runs in it that you had to contend with too. This, we're going to transition more into pure core Jack, but there is still going to be that little bit of burstiness here and there, so you can't just lock in metronome it. And it's going to be OD 8.5, HP 9, about 3 minutes long again. So again, this pool as a whole is just demanding a lot of consistency.
Yeah, for sure. You can't really get too lackadaisical with how you're playing through these patterns. This is probably going to be the most black and white pick out of anything in the Rice pool. Maybe Rice 1 and Rice 2 notwithstanding, but I feel like I've said it before, everybody at this point can play through Core Jack centric charts, and like you mentioned, the reason why we're calling it Core Jack centric and not just pure Core Jack is because you have these little embellishments going into the second quarter of the chart. You have these little 1/4 runs that break up the monotony, so definitely gotta watch out for those. Can't, like you mentioned, can't just metronome your way through it. You gotta pay attention to when that section starts, but once you get out of it, you can kind of get back into that groove.
Yeah, for sure. And you saw during that burst section, you also had to contend with some really nasty long jacks. And they really, this BPM, only 112. That's pretty slow even for a lot of players in this tournament. But just the control you need in this map is really demanding.
Yeah, the caveat of having that BPM so slow is the fact that you cannot afford to find rushes of 300s. Like, the bar just gets moved that ever so slightly higher. I feel like we say it during matches, it's like misses are fatal, 200s are fatal. On picks like this, 300s can make all the difference. Just getting out-ratioed by an opponent, just getting your score sniped by those hundreds of points here and there, every single judgment will matter on a pick like this because of the fact that that BPM is so low. And I really think the difference maker is going to be who can hold their nerve during those sections where it transitions out of the jacks into those 1/4 reading sections and then back into it.
Yeah, this section in particular has a lot of long jacks that you just have to not bottom out on. I've found myself do that a lot where I just don't lift my finger back up.
Yeah, for sure. There's going to be some heartbreak on this pick as well. But hopefully you're not on the receiving end of that heartbreak, and you can make it through relatively unscathed and pick up that point. And that will do it for Rice portion of the pool. We can transition on. We're going to move into what'll probably be our first LN pick. It is going to be LN1, and this is our more release-oriented pick.
Yep, this map, it's kind of an oldie. It was made in 2020, I think, or like really late 2019. So it's been around for a while in terms of like how many new LN maps and new LN mappers there are. So maybe if you're an LN frequenter, you've seen this one before. It's got a nice kind of slow tempo to it, but as the song goes on, I think it kind of builds in complexity, and I think it's a pretty enjoyable experience. It's gonna be a little bit harder than Aiken Pulse for sure, but I think some players might not find too much of a jump in it. but I think those ones really lacking in that kind of coordination that we've seen in the round of 32 LN1 and in the qualifier LN1. I think those people might struggle a little bit more on this one.
Absolutely, and I think the real pain point in this chart is when you do get those like 3-note chord impacts where you have that short release, then the medium release, and then the long release. Just keeping those, just respecting the release timings of those impacts. I found myself just dropping 200s left and right, trying to get like a decent score on this. And if you aren't too careful, there aren't a lot of notes in this chart, so if you do find a miss, getting back up over that 400 combo cap is going to take you a pretty decent amount of time where the other team can really take advantage. So maybe you want to take some of that accuracy damage to just hold on to the combo, because that could really make all the difference on a chart like this, at least in my opinion.
Oh yeah, for sure, because if a map only has, I think this has like 1,600 notes. If a map only has that many notes, one miss and you're out a quarter of the map in terms of your score. So you've really got to be keeping that combo intact, but also I do think the accuracy differences between players is going to show a lot, especially on sections like this where you have to balance the 3-column kind of stuff. And going into this final section, it's even more of that.
Yeah, there's like a pseudo coordination section, some really slow 3-column inverse. You can probably make an argument about how inversey it is, but just having a note anchored down while doing things around it, it's really where we start to separate those that have like good LN fundamentals versus ones that can have a really strong understanding of what they need to do on LN. So that is going to do it for LN1. We can move on to LN2, and personally, one of my favorite songs in this pool.
For sure, it's going to be Alexire's Formless Canvas. This is a ranked set, and this is not the top difficulty, so be mindful of that if you are going to practice this pool a bit ahead of time. Do not practice the wrong difficulty. This is going to be just straightforward 158 BPM density. Pretty forgiving OD. I definitely think the patterning and the speed, though, is definitely a step up from Togakushi in the last pool.
Yeah, I think this is the first real instance of like, okay, this is what density LN is going to probably begin to start to look like for the rest of this tournament. You get these 1/4 LN runs all over the place. You get some anchors here and there. Maybe some embellishments with some rice notes outside just to keep you on your toes, but honestly, just all of the LN runs are going to be the main focus. And where we decide to go from there, it remains to be seen. We'll kind of play it by ear with how folks do on this one, but honestly, this is probably, from what I've noticed in recent times, is these density LN picks tend to be the ones players tend to gravitate towards because of the fact that they can kind of get away with playing these 1/4 LN runs like Jump Stream at the expense of their accuracy. At least it's a little less burdensome to practice compared to something like Sagashimono in LN1. But it remains to be seen. Players like to surprise me sometimes.
You know, I think the thing about it is density's way easier to learn as a concept. Like, you can be a good physical player and learn how to play a map like this way quicker than you can learn to play a map like Sagashimono, and I think that's what causes that gravitation. But
yeah,
also, there was a surprise to me. In round of 32, Fantasy did get picked twice as much as the round of 32 density pick did. So I think there are a lot of players who may not really go into density first thing, but for those players, this is going to definitely be a pretty easy-ish density map to get into, and shouldn't take too many chips off your shoulder to learn this one.
Yeah, for sure. And then we can move on to our more wildcardy LN pick. And last one was my favorite song. It is my favorite chart in this pool. It is going to be Violet Rose, and it is going to be another Elixir chart. So we can get on into it here.
It doesn't count. The last one was on a mint set. It's a mint.
That's
chart.
true. It's a mint chart with the guest diff. But regardless, This is, again, more wild cardy. There are some elements of coordination, some elements of release, some elements of technical aspects to contend with as well. And it's very freeform. I love the fact that Alexar undertakes these more piano-esque songs, because you get stuff like this where there's just everything getting thrown at you in terms of LN proficiency.
Yeah, exactly. This map, I think, really separates itself from the other maps in this pool just off the fact of how much it's doing. Like this right here is kind of a full-on density section, but before you have release sections with bursts in them, and now, like, after this, there's going to be a more coordination-focused bit. Like, it just does not let up.
Yeah, and this one might be the target of bans for those teams that just really do not like to contend with LN picks, but on the flip side, this might be one of the more popular picks because of the fact that it is probably going to be seen as one of the harder LN picks in this pool, at least in comparison to Formless Canvas and Sagashi. So I'm really interested to see where the remaining player base gravitates if they do decide to tackle these LN picks. And just like that, this is the shortest LN pick in this pool, and it's already over.
Yeah, that ending gets me so pumped up, just all the symbols going crazy, man.
Mm-hmm.
It gets me nervous when I'm actually playing it.
Absolutely. We love getting these high energy style songs in here, so hopefully you guys appreciate it as well. As we transition on into the hybrid pool, it is going to be hybrid 1 to sew the gap. And Logan, I think you've wanted to use this for a while. I remember seeing this in pooling sheets long before this one.
Yeah, I think I've known about this map since 2020, and this is the first time I've actually got to put it in a tournament. And it's a pretty neat map. Nova Sagittari, for people who don't know, is a pretty small mapper who makes a lot of cool hybrid-y stuff. He also makes a lot of SV. I think he actually did get an SV map into the World Cup the past year.
I do believe you are correct. And this is I think one of my favorite hybrids that they have made. When you introduced me to this one, it's just such a mixed bag of what you're being asked to do. In the right sections, you transition into this sort of jump stream, jump trill-esque sections here and there. You do get that transition of those mini jack runs, and then you have these LNs that just start to interfere, start to encroach in what you're doing. You have to pay attention to those. You can't afford to let your fingers kind of fly off the handle, because if not, you're going to find yourself missing all over the place. For me personally, getting a consistent run on this was next to impossible. I would always fight it somewhere along the lines.
Yeah, same. I played this map a lot of times, and I don't think I've gotten a single run that is clean per se. It's just got so much. This dense jump stream, pretty easy to handle if you're at that physicality threshold, but then it throws in the mini jacks, and while the inverse is pretty rolly in this, it is enough to really make you drop a lot of AC if you hit any sort of a rush.
Yeah, and it just continues on these motifs that have been established earlier on, just appear more and more with more and more frequency. And honestly, I think the real deal breaker in this song is going to be those mini jack transitions. If it isn't the jump stream and if it isn't the LNs, because there's going to be something that is going to trip up just everybody, because there's just so much to deal with. But if you are one of those players that's consistent at transitioning in and out of sections like this might be a really good pick to try and dedicate some time to as a team.
Yeah, for sure. This one, definitely don't sight read it. You will miss a couple times.
Oh, absolutely. Do not
take that as a challenge.
Now you've thrown out a gauntlet, Logan. Now somebody's gonna try it.
Womp womp.
Womp womp. Alrighty, we're moving on into Hybrid 2. It is going to be Zeke did an event, Daria Core I did. Not Stability's top diff. I think this is the difficulty underneath it. Dendro's guest diff on this.
Yep, it is the difficulty directly below it. This map plays, I think, about 100% different from the previous hybrid. Like, I think there is zero in common. It has, you go from more of a straightforward jump stream focused with some inverse in it to very technical, kind of racy, speedy hybrid that has a lot of release elements in it.
Yeah, just those staggered timings on those LNs are I can already see players being like, why? Why are these staircase releases? And like you mentioned, just a lot of grace notes, a lot of more technical elements to some of the rice sections. You do get a couple of breaks here and there through some of these choruses, but once it kicks off, the build-ups begin to add some tension, and then you get into the chorus proper, the key eye sections, and you gotta lock in.
Getting into this LN section, it's not nearly as dense as what we've been seeing in our LN picks or to sow the gap, but I find it way trickier than to sow the gaps LNs at least.
Yeah, I could see players just spiking 200s left and right on these LN sections when they really do start to rain down. It's just the fact that there's so many staggered starts, so many staggered stops to them. Everybody should be able to handle these more rice burst oriented sections, but it's going to be really nailing down when the LNs begin to rain down that will separate those with good combo gaming versus those that have the better accuracy end. And it'll be interesting to see which side of that coin prevails if this does get picked in a match.
Yeah, that's a sure thing. There's going to be a tight tug of war between AC players who miss a couple times and then people who can like cruise a 970 on it, comboing all the way through.
Mm-hmm. But with that being said, we can transition on into the final hybrid pick and the final normal pick in this pool. It is going to be Glorious.
And it's going to be another lower difficulty map, so not the top diff by lot. And quick note before we even get into the map. This map is currently qualified. It's going to be ranked in about 12 hours, so if you download the pool right after the showcase, be sure you update this.
Yeah, thankfully, none of the notes should change, but the status will, and you can save everybody a couple of minutes by making sure you have it as its ranked status. Congrats a lot. I know they've been really putting in the work to make some more ranked material, and this is a really fun chart to play through. It's a little bit more LN oriented, as you've probably noticed already.
Yeah, this is supposed to be our kind of centric between Rice and LN hybrid, or Rice and LN, where like players who struggle with Rice are gonna find these mini jacks and bursts pretty hard. People who can't really hit the LNs are going to find the LNs in it hard as we get these runs of density, and I think it's just a really well-rounded 50-50 map. As you go through it, we're actually about to hit a timing change, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, things start to slow down a little bit. You get it. The feel of everything begins to change, and similar to how we had it in Violet Rose, where you kind of get the kitchen sink thrown at you with the LNs, you get, once again, this introduction of the staggered start-stops on the LNs, the staggered releases that can start to chip away at your accuracy if you're not too careful. The transitions with these rice bursts, not the most abrasive to read through. You do need to respect them, though, because you do get some of these jump-oriented patterns thrown in there just for good measure. So definitely watch out for those, but could potentially be a little bit friendlier, but remains to be seen. I think this is some might see this as the harder of the three hybrids, but I think everybody will find something as a bit of a pain point as we transition on into this mid game.
Yeah, for sure. Then going into this ending part, I think it's the hardest part of the map, so don't let your guard down.
Yeah, the BPM begins to ramp back up to where it was, and this outro is very quick. And just like that, that will do it for the normal map pool, all that is left is to show you guys the tiebreaker for the quarterfinals, and it is gonna be Kalakakla and map by Mystic Eyes.
Yeah, this map, quite a banger. I love Mystic Eyes stuff. This kind of map, I'm sure people have noticed if they've been playing the tiebreakers. We haven't really been picking tiebreakers that have like right section, LN section, hybrid section, like all these kinds of just straightforward, this is what you're doing in this section things. We've been picking like raw hybrids where you're constantly on your toes doing whatever the map makes you do, and this is going to be no exception. And a pretty calm intro, but after this, you are going to be doing a lot. It's got a lot of LN coordination in it. It's got a lot of jacks. It's got a lot of bursts. Just as you'll see when we get into the map, it's got a lot going on.
Absolutely, and the best way to avoid it, don't go to tiebreaker. Just win outright. Easy task. And here you can see, one-hand trills on the outer columns, on the LNs, and it really does begin to exemplify what basically a glance into what the end game is going to be in this tournament, because these patterns do not pull any punches. If you aren't ready, you will find yourself just missing entire sections.
Yeah, I think this map for sure is going to be the breaking point for some of the lower-ended teams, but I do think that they'll still get some pretty high scores on this, but you always see kind of in this intro to mid-game where those lower teams, it really starts to show the cracks in their skill set and where they can improve. So I hope that this does push the players a little bit as we go into this 1/3 jack section.
Yeah, again, you get these, the entire mood of the song kind of shifts and the patterning goes along with it. You see this more rigid structure to everything, a couple of embellishments here and there, a couple of bursts, but ultimately just very soundly structured, not as technical as some of the other things you have seen, and you get a tiny bit of a break to kind of catch your breath, this slow LN section that begins to prepare you for what is now the back half of the chart.
Yeah, don't let your guard down on it though, because you still have to deal with this rhythm and these LN holds, and I've seen a lot of matches streamed already where players miss on these sections just because they kind of forget to coordinate their fingers, and the common mistake, so just avoid it, especially in the case where you're in tiebreaker against a team that's probably your skill level.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes down to it, whoever can hold their composure in moments like this will basically prove that they deserve to move on. And we will have some notes at the end about how things are gonna happen moving forward, because there are some important things to mention. But moving back into the chart, we get this full-on LN section raining down. As Logan mentioned, it's like, this is just straight up a hybrid chart at its core. So this is probably the most pure LN section you'll see as we make our way into the last quarter.
Yeah, for sure. And even the players who are kind of the LN teams of this tournament per se are gonna struggle with that LN section. I feel like it is, if you can hit the density even, it is very hard to coordinate. And I find myself dropping a lot of accuracy there from time to time. And the map starts to wind down a little bit, but there still are a lot of bursts woven in through these LNs that are going to the synths.
Another thing to note, there are definitely some patterns throughout this chart where mirror might be an option for players. You see those right hand LN trills, maybe you want to play those on the left hand. It'll be interesting to see what developments, what methods players come up with to try and ensure that they have everything dialed in for what will be the quarterfinals tiebreaker. And with that being said, that will do it for the quarterfinals Mappool showcase. As always, we hope you guys enjoy what the Mappool team has put together. Hopefully you guys do practice the Mappool. Don't go sight reading everything. You will have a bad time, but ultimately, that's your decision to make.
And with that, yeah, that's the pool. We do have one more thing to go over, though, and that is conditional matches for people in losers bracket. Do you want to take away explaining that, or do you want me to do it, Sparky?
I've got it. So, conditional matches for those of you in the losers bracket. Please do note that you will have to play 2 matches from here on out. We do not want to have instances where you reschedule that first match, completely forget about the second one, and find yourself knocked out of the tournament. That would be very sad. We would be very sad for you as well. So please, please, please pay attention to the schedule that will be coming out either later today or at the very latest tomorrow, to make sure that you understand that you will probably see your team name on that sheet 3 times. That first time is going to be your first match, and then the following 2 are your conditionals. Be sure to reach out to both of those teams that you could potentially be playing up against to ensure that you have a time that is conducive. The second match you have to play has to be after your first one. So be sure that if you have a late Saturday match for your first one, that you schedule something for Sunday. Please reach out to either Dinah or any of the other hosts or staff members that have helped with scheduling in the past. If you have any questions or if you have any conflicts, we will do our best to resolve anything. We want to ensure that the losers bracket goes as smoothly as possible, because, oh boy, there's nothing worse than missing a conditional. Logan, do you have anything else to add? Any last parting words before we close out this stream?
I don't think I have much else to add. I think, judging from the Twitch chat, that the pool seems pretty fun to play, so I hope you guys have fun playing it, and I'm definitely looking forward to the quarterfinals bracket matches.
Absolutely. So with that being said, please keep an eye on the announcements channel for any updates for anything related to schedules. If you have any questions, like I mentioned, be sure to reach out. We are more than happy to help. We are more than happy to resolve any conflicts with scheduling. If you have any questions, if you don't know how conditionals work, please reach out to us. We want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to put their best foot forward going into quarterfinals weekend and beyond. But until then, we'll catch you guys later.
Bye-bye.